Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us. The Browns getting ready on a short week, and the Pittsburgh Steelers will be in town Thursday. And take a look at this. Some not so great news coming out of Berea. Mary Kay Cabot tweets that the Browns did not have Myles Garrett or Joel Bitonio practicing, both uncertain for the Steelers game. Jadeveon Clowney is already out. They put Chase Winovich also on the injured list, and still not certain if Jack Conklin will be able to go. So on a short week, as you might expect, some guys not 100% certain that they're going to go. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Tim, it's important to note, still don't know the extent of those injuries to Garrett and Bitonio. It's not unlike Kevin Stefanski to give veterans kind of day off, an extra day of rest on a short week. But that's concerning if those two guys can't go.
No question. I mean, obviously, coming off, what happened on Sunday against the Jets, obviously the Browns were going to have a lot of work to do to try and kind of right the ship against the Steelers. With being without your best defensive player, Myles Garrett, and probably your best offensive lineman, and Joel Bitonio, if neither one can go, that's catastrophic. I mean, this is a team with Jacoby Brissett, a quarterback that already doesn't have a large margin for error. You take those two guys away, that margin almost becomes minuscule. So I think the Browns got to hope at least one of those guys, if not both of them, can play on Thursday, especially Garrett, since there's no Jadeveon Clowney on Thursday. I know the Steelers don't have TJ Watt, but Steelers are still a pretty good football team even without TJ Watt on defense. So Browns are going to need to have everybody that can play be able to go on Thursday night.
All right, we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about that loss to the Jets.
Hi, this is Glenn, formerly of Berea. There's been Red Right 88, the drive, and the fumble that were terrible losses due to the consequences. You might add the 65 loss to the great Packers team in the title game. Yesterday may not be as memorable, I hope, but somehow feels just as much as a punch in the stomach. Maybe because it's more recent, and maybe because those other losses were to good teams. How would you compare Sunday's loss to any of them? Thanks for the great show. I watch it whenever possible.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tim, you just told me you wrote an article on this. Red Right 88, fumble, drive, all those were playoff games, so they ended the season. As much as it feels like that game kind of did some damage, still plenty of time to recover. Having said that, it's pretty devastating of a loss.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the article that you referenced is actually the biggest collapses they've had since 1999. So you kind of take out Red Right 88, the fumble, the drive, all those different things. So I was looking specifically at games since 1999, and this is as bad. This was one of the worst game losses you can imagine. It's one of the bigger meltdowns I can remember in recent NFL history. But actually, I did not have it as the worst one. And the reason I didn't is because, remember, 2001, I believe it was week 9, the Browns went to Chicago to face the Bears. They had a 14-point lead with less than a minute to go. 14 points. Now, if Cade York kicks that extra point, this game goes to overtime, and maybe it's right up there. But I have to also remember there was a touchdown pass with 48 seconds left that the Bears got to make it a 7-point game. They got an onside kick. Then they hit a Hail Mary as time expired off a tip into the hands of James Allen to tie the game. And the Browns still had the ball in overtime. They had a chance to win, but then the Tim Couch pass gets tipped into the air in overtime into the waiting hands of Mike Brown of the Bears, who takes it for a pick six, which he did, which is the second week in a row that happened. He did that a week prior against the 49ers. And the reason I said that game was worse than the one with the Jets is because I believe if you want to make a collapse more devastating, you have to kind of put yourself in a position to rescue the collapse. Sunday, the Browns only had about 20-some seconds. They maybe would have had 2-3 plays to get Cade York in a position to hit a 55-yard field goal in the Dawg Pound end of the stadium. We already know just historically how nasty that is for any kicker, especially Browns kickers in the past trying to kick at that end of the stadium. In that Bears game, the Browns still had a chance in overtime. That's the old school overtime rules, just any score wins. And then they gave up a pick six, which I think truly makes it more devastating in my mind.
All right, so yesterday, none of the defensive players would exactly tell us what the breakdown was. It kept coming back to communication errors. So today, Nick Chubb took a look at things that he thought he could have done differently, and Amari Cooper also what he could have done differently. Here are Chubb and Cooper kind of owning up and taking some ownership of what happened on Sunday.
They pop it up in the air and then you go grab it, get hit or whatever like that. But it's like a kind of a new way of teams onside kicking the ball to where you don't really know if it's going to go 10 yards and it's moving at a awkward angle. It's like more difficult to locate the ball and make a play on it because on one hand you want to get to the ball as fast as possible, but on the other hand you don't want to misjudge the ball. So, I mean, it's just more difficult. But, at the end of the day, you got to make those type of plays.
So I think the first down marker was at the 1 or 2, and the goal line's right there, too. I mean, I probably could have got down, probably been third and short, 30 inches, but, I mean, it possibly could have happened. I couldn't have went out of bounds because people were behind me. They would have pushed me in or something like that. So probably should just drop down after I made the cut.
And again, Tim, those are so far down the onside kick is not, but Nick Chubb not going down is so far down the list of things that went wrong. You can't. You figure if you put that in, you're 14 points up.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that game on Sunday was a perfect storm of events. If any one of about 10 different things doesn't happen, the Browns are 2-0. We're talking about, for example, how great of a game Amari Cooper had, or Jacoby Brissett, maybe one of the better games of his NFL career. That's what we'd be talking about if 10 different things all don't go against the Browns. And I think you have to appreciate that Amari Cooper and Nick Chubb are taking accountability. I think that's what, responsible, good veterans do. Even though, quite honestly, the blame goes to the defense. Because, I mean, in that situation, when you're up by a 13-point lead, when you have 13 points, the number one thing you do is keep everything in front of you defensively, tackle the players in bounds. And if, for example, Corey Davis still gets the ball at about the 30-yard line, if they tackle him in bounds, that burns an extra 10 seconds off the clock, makes things more difficult. Those coverage busts can't happen, particularly in that situation where an easy touchdown gets you back into the game. So again, I think the odds or something like that from Next Gen Stats were like 0.3% chance it was going to happen. So it didn't. It's just it was very fluky in a way that so many things went wrong in such a short amount of time for the Browns. And
yeah,
I think in some way, every player should take ownership, even though they don't necessarily didn't have a moment where they need to. It's a sign of good, accountability, I think.
All right, let's take a look at the Pro Football Focus position grades through 2 weeks. Highest graded guys at each of these positions throughout the NFL. You see Josh Allen as the quarterback. Nick Chubb is the highest graded running back. Diggs the highest graded wide receiver. Kelsey. Andrew Thomas, who was in that discussion, should the Browns take, when they took Jedrick Wills. But Nick Chubb, the highest graded running back, and it's hard to, we've seen him play. It's hard to argue with that whatsoever. He's been outstanding.
Yeah, the analytics clearly matched up to the eye test in this case. I mean, we saw Chubb break out some really big runs against Carolina, didn't score. Against the Jets, obviously, he scored 3 touchdowns. You can argue whether he should have scored the 3rd touchdown or not, but I mean, to have, those 2 games in a row, obviously, that's the kind of impact I think the Browns are looking to have out of the running game with Deshaun Watson not being in the line. If you need Nick Chubb to play well and you need him to be one of the best backs in the NFL, 2 games into the season, I think he's done just that.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. All right, we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one, looking forward to this game against the Steelers.
Hi, this your man, E.T. calling again. It's Tuesday, so we moving on from the Jets game, and we focusing on Pittsburgh. So, Miles, I need you to get ready, man. I need you to get ready. Mr. Trubisky was talking about your mama. Secondary, the receiver said y'all couldn't cover them. If they laid down, drunk a warm glass of milk, ask you to tuck them in. I need the defense to get mad. I need them to play with that control, aggression, control, anger. We need to make sure these communication walls is gone. And this is going to be a statement game. This is a statement game for the Browns organization. Can we bounce back and be the team that we know we can be, even without our franchise quarterback? This is going to be a statement game for Stefanski and the offense from a play calling perspective, which I have total faith in the offense. This is going to be a statement game for Myles Garrett. I need him to step up. I don't care if he going to get the sack record and we lose. I need him to dominate. I need him to have 3 sacks and a forced fumble and be the defensive player, number 1 overall pick that everybody expects him to be. I need Joe Woods and his defense to fly to the ball. I need him to cover, and I need him to make plays. We need to win this game and take control, a stranglehold on the AFC North. Let's go Browns. Have a nice day.
All right, as always, and that's good news. Everybody in the division has a loss, at least one loss. Bengals have 2. So the division's there, but there's some really concerning things that happened in those first 2 games.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess if there's anything that we've learned in the aftermath of it, that it seems like the defensive backs understand what they have to do in its communication. I think I forget what day Greg Newsome said this, that they need to work on maybe over-communicating, over-emphasizing communication, at least till you kind of get it down to a habit. Do it in practice where you're communicating way more than you should, so everybody's on the same page. Because, I mean, those coverage busts are a case of 2 players playing different coverages when everybody needs to be doing the same thing. And that was concerning that's happened the second year in a row. And that needs to be on point, because Mitch Trubisky might not be the best quarterback in the NFL, but he's got some good skill players. I mean, Deontay Johnson is one of the most underrated receivers in football. I like Pat Freiermuth as the tight end. George Pickens, the receiver, very, very promising as a rookie. And the other thing to look at with this game is how the Steelers defense is going to play. I mean, no TJ Watt last Sunday against the Patriots. They gave up almost 400 yards of total offense, including 124 on the ground. Mac Jones didn't get sacked 1 time, and that was after he got absolutely dominated by the Miami Dolphins defense in Miami in week 1. So the opportunity is there for the Browns on both sides of the ball. It's just a matter of how they can move past this game, just moving the focus to, one game at a time, one play at a time. Is cliche, but it's true. Just managing things and not trying to let, the chaos and the dread of what happened on Sunday spill over into another game. Because if that happens, it can sink the season pretty quickly.
All right, this is from Andrew Filipponi. This is about the Steelers' offense, something we wouldn't recognize. So the Steelers haven't scored an offensive touchdown in the first quarter since the Lions tie. That's last year, 11 games in a row. And he also points out this. You're dealing with scripted plays to begin with, so theoretically it's the plays their offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, likes the best. So again, Steelers offense having some issues getting things rolling. Browns offense plays better when they're in front.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's going to be interesting. We know Kevin Stefanski can script plays pretty well. We saw that particularly on Sunday. I thought he had a great game calling the offensive plays. He really got everything kind of flowing. Everything looked crisp as far as, the operation of the offense went. But I think with Pittsburgh, when you're looking at this game, you're probably looking at all those coverage busts that the Browns have. You're probably salivating if you're a guy like Deontay Johnson, knowing that pretty much they should be trying to test that secondary early and often, take some deep shots early, and really see if the Browns' communication on that back end is any better. And if it's not, it could be a long day for them. I mean, like I said, Trubisky's not a great quarterback, but he's competent enough in the NFL. And, I mean, they just got torn up by Joe Flacco on Sunday, so they can't take anybody for granted, especially when you have the talented skill players that the Steelers have.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. More on the Browns coming up on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Let's continue talking Browns. We're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the upcoming game.
Tom Hood, Cortland, Ohio. I just got done watching Kevin Stefanski make the statement, we got to move on for this one and start thinking about Pittsburgh. After 3 years of letdowns from your defense, when are you going to address it? I think it's time to make somebody accountable for this. What I wouldn't do to have Greg Williams back in the defensive coordinator. He held people accountable. When is the defense going to be held accountable? Love your show. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I can't argue with the accountability thing. I'm not crazy about the safety 25 yards off the line of scrimmage. It would make sure that you don't have the significant busted coverages, though.
Yeah, I think in that game at the end, I think if you had John Johnson line up in Lorraine or whatever, since it's the west side of the field, not the east side of the field, they might have had a better chance to contain and play that prevent defense. But I understand, where it's coming from with accountability. And I got to believe, I know the players are taking ownership of communication breakdowns. Grant Delpit saying it's an issue with player-to-player communication. But the fact that this is the second year in a row that this is an issue at the beginning of the season, that's on Joe Woods. He's got to find a way to make that easier communicate with the team, especially, this is the beginning of the season again. This should have been something that was corrected and, was kept corrected. That was something that was emphasized in the offseason. It wasn't. So I'm not ready to say he's on the hot seat, but that seat should definitely be warmer right now. And as far as going defensive coordinator, Greg Williams would not be the bet. I mean, we have to remember this is a guy who said a cover zero blitz, when he was a defensive coordinator against the Raiders and then Derek Carr just threw it right over that defense's head for a touchdown in the final seconds. You still got to execute in some way or another, but doing that it doesn't seem sensible, and I think there's a reason he's not coaching right now.
All right, let's take a look of Pro Football Focus. The Browns have 3 of the top 10 graded defensive players in the entire NFL this year. You got Myles Garrett at 91.9, JOK at 91.4, Anthony Walker at 90.8. No other team has a guy in the top 15, more than one player in the top 15. Now, what you notice there is nobody in the secondary is graded very highly, at least not in the top. Let's take a look at this in conjunction with that. This is from More For You Cleveland. Denzel Ward graded out at a 33.5, worst among players who played defensive snaps in the game against the Jets. And again, that's something that you can't have from your cornerback. The first 3 are great, but that tells you need more from Ward.
Yeah, definitely. When you look at defense, obviously pass rushing is the most important thing on defense, but the second most important thing is cornerback depth and having good corners. And Denzel Ward, 2 games in a row just hasn't looked like Denzel Ward. We saw that a year ago. He turned it around as the season went on. Obviously, he had a great 2021 season, but just that image of Corey Davis sprinting right between Denzel Ward and Grant Delpit, that's going to sit for a while. Even if the Browns win on Thursday, go on for a while, it's going to take a while, for that secondary to kind of shake that off just because of how bad that was. That game was theirs for the taking. All they had to do is just make sure they don't get beat deep. 2 plays after they take a 13-point lead, they get beat deep. And again, that's on communication. That's on players who have to understand their assignments, take accountability for those assignments, and make sure that gets corrected. This is a group that should be better with that. These guys played together last season. It's not like last year where they at least had the excuse of, new pieces being thrown together. They had just signed John Johnson, drafted Greg Newsome. Grant Delpit was coming out to torn Achilles. They had an excuse for it. This year they don't. And it's on them to get it fixed because the rest of the defense, particularly that front seven, is doing their job right now.
Would agree wholeheartedly. All right, so communication from the sidelines or the coaches upstairs to the field, the guy on the field, is what they refer to as the green dot. Sometimes it's Jacob Phillips, sometimes it's Anthony Walker. That's what our voicemail of Truth and Reason deals with. Who should be wearing the green dot?
Yeah, hi, this is Ron from down here in Clayton again. And I've just got a couple things to say. Obviously, at this point, I probably couldn't say anything that hasn't been said about the Browns. Obviously, a terrible loss to take. But I think the biggest problem with no communication is the green dot's been passed around all over the defense this year. My opinion, since the problem apparently lies in the secondary, I would put that green dot on John Johnson's helmet. He called the plays for the Rams, went to the Super Bowl. Apparently he does a pretty good job at that. And it seems like our only problem area is the secondary. So if you let him call the plays and get everybody set back there, pretty much takes care of the problem. As for firing the defensive coach, not a good thing. Woods is, I would assume, is as good as anybody else's. Communication's a problem, solid communication, and we're good. Last year's team, great defense. This year, probably better. I don't know. At this point, it doesn't look that way. And the other thing I was upset with was Myles Garrett getting on the fans for booing at the end of the game. And if ever a team needed to be booed, it was Cleveland Browns on Sunday. You just don't do that if you're professionals. And go Browns, woof, we're still in it. Don't freak out yet. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
All right, appreciate all the voicemails. I like the idea as far as putting the communication, the green dot sticker on John Johnson's helmet. I get why they do Anthony Walker. He's kind of a captain. You know, he's very well thought of. If you're having issues in the secondary, it starts in the secondary then. That's where the communication starts.
Exactly, 100%. I mean, those safeties, John Johnson sees everything right there. I mean, if you're a safety, you have the best view of everything because you're playing the furthest back. It makes perfect sense why a safety should be, wearing the green dot in that situation. I mean, John Johnson rarely comes out the field. With the Browns and the way they play defense, the linebackers kind of go in and out throughout the game. I mean, there's plenty of plays where Anthony Walker's not on the field in those situations, and you got to have, if you're going to give the green dot to somebody, it's got to be someone who's on the field for the vast majority of snaps. Maybe not every single one, but way more often than not, he's got to be on the field. And John Johnson, I think, would be the good pick for that. Again, those secondary guys need communication. They have to figure out the communication. Why not make it so one of those guys is the one calling out the plays and kind of getting everybody set up, whether, because like I said, safety's quarterback of that defense, they got to get everybody set up, put it in John Johnson's hands and see if it makes a big difference.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. So we will continue talking Browns. More voicemails of Truth and Reason straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Let's head right back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about that Jets game, looking ahead to the Steelers.
Dave, the old saying goes in sports, you win as a team and you lose as a team. But yesterday's game was no loss, but a total embarrassment by some coaches and players. But I'm going to concentrate on players that should be praised. Number one, the offensive line. They played excellent with very few penalties. Number two, Colby Brissett played like a true starting quarterback. Now let me talk about my two favorite players. Number one, Nick Chubb. He ran like he always does as a number one running back in the NFL, and no one should question if he should have stepped out of bounds at the 1 yard line instead of the touchdown, because with a 2-touchdown lead with the time remaining and with no timeouts, we should never have gotten beaten and embarrassed. Now to Kareem Hunt. Some of the players and coaches who have been playing and coaching subpar should donate some of their wages to pay for his extension to his contract. Everyone should want to play and give the desire like Chubb and Hunt. The last statement I'd like to give is to Myles Garrett. Think before you speak. The fans have all the right to show their frustration and emotion after an embarrassment like that. You should question yourself instead of the fans with the total effort you displayed in yesterday's game.
All right, as always, appreciate all the voicemails. And Tim, that seems to be the prevailing sentiment, fans do have the right to boo. If a team isn't performing, that's just the way pro sports are.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a two-way relationship with the fans and the players. And I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah basically said, he can understand, where the fans are coming from, those boos. It's not just that it was week 2. I think it's Myles Garrett said he doesn't think the fans are giving up on him. It's not about giving up. It's having a 13-point lead with 1:55 to go. The other team has no timeouts. Even if you give up a touchdown, it's not the end of the world. The important thing is you don't give up 2. Let alone giving up the first one about 22 seconds after your guy just ran in the end zone to give you a 13-point lead. That can't happen. And, I mean, there's blame to go across that defense, particularly in the secondary. But, when you see something historic like that, and I think the ESPN stats information put it best. I mean, it's been 21 years since a team had that big a lead with 2 minutes to go in a game and lost. And that, of course, was the 2001 Browns, which we referenced at the top of the show. So when something historic like that happens, when you're supposed to be celebrating a win, you're supposed to be 2-0, going into Steelers week with a chance to be 3-0, and all of a sudden you're 1-1, the fans kind of have a right to boo in that situation.
Absolutely. And you know what? They want a passionate fan base. You have a passionate fan base. That's what happens when you have a passionate fan base. They're going to boo when things like that happen, and they have every right to. We talked a little bit about Jacoby Brissett, and Ron referenced it in the voicemail. Brissett played pretty well. Take a look at this. This is through 2 weeks. Jacoby Brissett has a 65.6 completion percentage rate. That's 11th best in the NFL. 59.4 QBR. That's 12th best in the NFL. His passer rating at 86.5 is 15th best in the NFL. If you're getting that type of production from Jacoby Brissett, you're going to be really good, and you should be 2-0. Keep in mind, that's supposed to be the guy that isn't going to be there is the full-time solution. And he's performing middle of the road. It isn't going to get any better than that. That's as good as it's going to get with your backup quarterback.
Exactly. And I think you take a look at those two games and those numbers in those 2 games. If you told Browns fans that Jacoby Brissett was going to do that, at least those first 2 games, everybody was signed up for that because he's been about as good as they could have hoped for. A guy who's just a professional, manages the offense, gets players in the right positions. And I mean, Sunday was about as good of a game as you can ask for. Obviously, he didn't take the deep shots. That's not his game, though. His game is just get the ball to the open receiver. Obviously, he and Amari Cooper had great connections on Sunday. They were really in sync. And it just worked really well for Jacoby Brissett on that last minute, those last 2 plays when he kind of had to be a hero and play outside of himself, which is not his game. His game is to kind of complement the rest of the offense and be a guy who can hold his own, not necessarily win a game for you, but not going to lose the game for you. And that's basically just what this team needs to have. He just needs to be steady for, these next 9 games till Deshaun Watson comes back. And then you can kind of start to elevate what you expect out of this offense. But the Browns, I don't think you could ask for much more from Jacoby Brissett than what he's given through these 2 games.
All right, let's take a look at this before we go to break. Through 2 games, Browns rank 7th in offensive efficiency and 27th in defensive efficiency, 20th in special teams efficiency. And that's completely the reverse of what you would think. So the offense getting it done, defense 27th, that has got to improve significantly pretty quickly because of what's ahead in terms of you've got Brady coming in, you've got Herbert, you've got guys that, this is the offenses that don't threaten your defense you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I mean, Sunday should be a wake-up call that if Joe Flacco can, burn up that Browns secondary the way they did, with those wide-open coverage busts and, that last drive where pretty much he could do whatever he wanted in the final minute. What's going to happen when Justin Herbert comes to First Energy Stadium? What's going to happen when they have to go to Buffalo to take on Josh Allen? What's going to happen when Tom Brady and the Buccaneers come in, in that final game before Deshaun Watson's eligible to come back? So the onus is on them to get the communication short of and get it short of immediately, because if this keeps happening, I mean, teams might not even need to run on them. They could just throw and just come to expect that the Browns are going to have one of those coverage busts. They're going to have a miscommunication again. And trust me, every team in the NFL always sees those things. They know what's going on. And when when the defense gives up 2 long plays in as many games in complete coverage bust, you got to believe if you're the Browns, you got to expect that that secondary is going to get tested regardless of who the quarterback is. That's just the way the NFL is. It's a copycat league, and everybody's going to try to do the same thing to the Browns that what the Panthers and the Jets have done the last 2 weeks. And also kind of going back to the special teams thing, they have to share their own responsibility in there, and particularly with the punt return game, got to find somebody more sure-handed than Demetric Felton to catch those punts. Although I will say, Jerome Ford, I think, has done a fair job as a kick returner. He's had some nice returns. That's the one thing. Him and Cade York are the 2 good things going on right now in that unit. The rest needs work.
Tim Bielik and I are going to take one more time out. We'll be right back talking more Browns. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Let's head right to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns and the Steelers Thursday night.
Hello, this is Troy Kozlowski calling from the west side of Cleveland, Ohio. Love your guys' show. Just wanted to speak about moving forward after this loss, embarrassing, dreadful loss that we had. I seen on Monday after the game, a lot of the media, a lot of the fans were talking about it, and I get that. I'm hearing it on Tuesday, too, and it's like, okay, we need to get over that. Thursday's at hand. We're facing Pittsburgh at home. They are our rivals, our villains, and I just wanted to see what you guys think needs to be done in order to beat them and how quickly we could turn that switch back on, because after week 1, we were all excited and, pumped for the Browns to finally win a week 1, and then it's like, we lost the way we lost against the Jets. What does it take to turn that switch back on so us fans can be happy like we were after week 1? Thanks.
Tim, it's real simple. A win. Fans are happy when you win. They're not so happy when you lose. The good news is there's 3 teams, Miami, the Bills, and the Chiefs that are 2-0. Everybody else in the AFC is 1-1. Key's going to be taking care of the football. The Steelers are a defense that turns it over. They forced Joe Burrow into 5 turnovers. So that's first and foremost. And then don't blow coverages. It sounds pretty simple.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but, it's obviously got to be fixed. If it's not fixed, then certainly you're going to have a chance to see a lot of the same things that we've seen the last 2 weeks. And if that happens, the Browns are going to be hard-pressed to beat anybody, regardless of who the quarterback is, just because, you give any NFL quarterback blown coverages, they should be able to find them, and they should be able to take advantage of them. So that's the number one thing that has to get cleared up is, can they do what Greg Newsome has said and over-communicate and overemphasize so that that every secondary player knows well and true 110% plus or whatever what they're doing on that particular play. That's got to be the number one thing. Number 2 is the same key I've been saying for, the last few games for the Browns. They got to get off to a good start. They got to get, feeling good, get an early touchdown, kind of start to put some of those bad feelings behind. And the big thing, they got to finish. 2 fourth quarters in a row, they haven't gotten the job done when they've needed to. They've gotten the job done when they need to. One game, and the second, not so much. It's got to be, playing a complete 60 minutes. And I think that should be the biggest. That game should be the biggest reminder of all that. It's a 60-minute game. It's not a 58-minute game. It's not a 59-minute game. 60 minutes. You got to play strong to the end. It's not over until that clock hits 0. Again, cliche, but that's just got to be the way they approach it. And certainly with TJ Watt out and with Mitch Trubisky being the quarterback of the Steelers, it's a very winnable game for them. They just got to go out and, just put their focus solely on what's going on the field and not, try not to have, what happened on Sunday kind of in the back of their minds.
And Mike Tomlin talked about the Browns' offensive line and their run game. You can be sure point of emphasis is going to be shutting that down. Listen to Mike Tomlin talking about the O-line and run game.
They got a solid line up front, veteran guys that have been together for a number of years, guys that are really good at getting hats on hats. Very rarely do they have unblocked hats in the run game. That adds to how lethal their run game is with Chubb and Hunt. And so, those are some of the challenges on that side of the ball. Obviously, we got to do a good job in the run game. We know that when we play Cleveland. I'm sure everybody knows that when they play Cleveland, but it doesn't necessarily stop the storm from coming. Chubb put that ball in the end zone there late yesterday, and it looked like the end of it. And so we prepare with that knowing and with that understanding that knowing is just a component of the battle. Planning is just a component of the battle. The reality is there's going to be moments where you're going to have DBs matched up in one-on-one circumstances with Chubb, and the DBs got to do the job, and that's just the nature of challenges of weeks like this week.
And again, you can be sure those are the type of – he's saying that in part for his defenders as much as he is to the media. Just your gut feeling on this. How do you think this plays out, Tim?
It's going to, I think, come down to the health of Myles Garrett. I think if he's able to go and he's able to at least be 80-90% of what he's capable of, the Browns have a very good shot to win this game. You look at the Steelers, I know they're going to focus heavily against the run because they are pretty good at, responding in certain situations when their defenses perform well. Although you look at the numbers, they do have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. 2 games giving up 128.5 yards rushing per game against the Bengals and the Patriots. New England's more of a better running team than the Bengals, I think, but still not good numbers. So, but you have to expect that the Steelers are going to load up against the run, do what most teams are going to do, and dare Jacoby Brissett to beat them. And, I mean, that secondary, Micah Fitzpatrick's really good, but there's question marks in the rest of that secondary. So outside of Fitzpatrick, you got to know where 39 is, but they're beatable, I think, through the air. And especially with no T.J. Watt, they may have to bring more bodies to create more of a pass rush than typical, because right now without T.J. Watt, is basically Cameron Hayward and the rest of the defense trying to get to the quarterback. They didn't have a single sack against New England in week 2, as I said earlier. So the Browns are going to have to protect Jacoby Brissett. He's going to have to have a similar performance to what he had on Sunday against the Jets. And again, if that defense can figure out what's going on with the coverage busts and get that sorted out and have a clean game communication, they should be okay. I mean, I expect the Steelers to get theirs because their skill players are just that good. I mean, again, I talked about Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, so it's going to be close either way. And like you said, it's just going to be, can the Browns move past what happened Sunday? I mean, they've shown under Kevin Stefanski they have an ability to move past tough losses and come back with good performances. I expect them to give a good effort on Thursday night, whether it leads to a win or not. I think, like I said, it's going to depend largely on Myles Garrett's health.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik. Make sure you read on pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Quick timeout. Other side of the break, it's Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Time for us to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns' early season struggles.
Hi, this is Ernie, and I know that game Sunday has been rehashed over and over again. But one thing I don't really understand is why, since we have the best defensive backs in the country. They weren't bumping people at the line of scrimmage, so they couldn't get out there to that 10-yard line, which would have made it a whole lot easier for a defensive line to get in there on Flacco. But instead, they're playing 15 yards off the ball and allowing catches 5 yards in front of them. That was so frustrating, and it wasn't just once. It was repeatedly. It was as if they were in a no-prevent defense from the beginning of the game. I think we got to put that on Joe Woods. I'm not a defensive coach, but that looked to be the better way to approach getting after that quarterback. Go Brown. Woof.
All right, as always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily. Casey, a lot's been made of the defense and on Joe Woods. At some point in time, the players have to go out and play. As far as how you defend it, if you're having trouble communicating between each other, which clearly they are, you can't get too crazy with what you do schematically.
Yeah, there has to be some serious conversations going on to find out where the disconnect is. You know, like, it starts at the top with Stefanski. He saw what happened week 1. He should have been in those meeting rooms making sure that the communication errors were nullified. And then it goes to Joe Woods. You know, are they understanding what you're asking them to do within the scheme, their assignments, you know? And then it goes to Jeff Howard, the DB coach. Like, how is this being implemented? Like, there is a disconnect somewhere along the line, and they have to snuff it out. You know, it's going to get late really early if they don't. You know, things that happen on Sunday absolutely cannot happen. You know, you're a professional football player. You have to be assignment sound. You guys all have to be on the same page. That's how this works. And as for what the caller is saying, like, I do think that if they're not understanding their assignments within the scheme, keep it simple. Like, do something that they can do that you know that they can do, whether that is dropping safeties back and letting Newsome and Ward play a little more man because they can do that, try to disrupt things at the line of scrimmage because, you know, you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and when it's not working, like, at some point you have to change it up. So they have to find a balance inside of there, and they only have a couple days to get it figured out before the Steelers come to town. So, you know, they're kind of in a no man's land now. I don't know if you can fix everything, but it comes down to the communication. Like, you have to figure out where that disconnect is, and you have to correct it now.
And, you know, that secondary is too talented to be giving up the kind of plays that they're giving up. I mean, it's a first-round pick in Greg Newsome. It's a first-round pick in Denzel Ward. It's a second-round pick in Grant Delpit. And we've seen them play well. They got to get it together in a hurry. This from Dawg Pound Daily. I know you didn't write it, but from the site you write for. 3 areas the Browns must improve. Number 3, the pass rush. You know, Myles Garrett caused a lot of problems, but then didn't do as much as you think he might have done against the Jets. Winovich now on IR. Clowney not playing, so they're going to be beat up along that defensive line. Number 2, all areas of special teams. And, yeah, that's an exclamation point. You know, Cade York was good week 1 with that game-winning field goal. Missed the extra point. That was critical. You expect those kind of things. The kick return game has not been good. I don't know about you. Demetric Felton gives me, like, little heart palpitations every time he goes back to catch a kick because he's not fielding them cleanly. And number 1 is pretty obvious. We've already talked about it. The secondary has to communicate, and they have to all be on the same page. Those are pretty important things, and I agree with all of them. What are your thoughts on those?
Well, as far as the pass rush, like when Clowney went out, the pass rush became non-existent. You know, they weren't able to generate anything, and Myles kind of tapered off from that. You know, the second part of the third quarter and all the fourth quarter it wasn't there. So they have to manufacture it if it's not going to be there with a natural 4-man rush. And now that Clowney's out, and Winovich really hasn't contributed yet, so I'm not really counting him as a huge negative. But one of these young guys from Isaiah Thomas or Alex Wright really has to step up. This is it. I know that you'll probably see Isaac Rochelle, but, like, they have to get it going. And the Steelers don't bring an awesome offensive line to town, so, you know, they got to perform. The secondary issues, like, we've seen them do it. That's the real frustrating part is the second half of last season. It smoothed out and they were playing as a unit. So we know it's possible, but whatever the error is, I don't know if they have enough time to fully correct it. Luckily, they're playing a team like the Steelers, and Trubisky just doesn't push it vertically. He just does not do that. So that'll hopefully give them a little extra time to get that going. But the special teams have been rough. Oh man, it's, like the fake punt was a good play on the Jets part. Like that was, not something I'm going to just super fault Mike Prefer for. But if you look at like just the coverage units and like you said, Felton, he does not inspire confidence when he's fielding those punts, man. It's every time it's just holding your breath, just field it, young man, just field it. And York, I'm giving him leeway, obviously. I don't know what life would be like for him now had he not made the week 1 kick after what happened Sunday. If that would have been like the first big moment for him and he missed that, it might be a little different, but you're going to give him a little more leeway. But they have to shore a lot of things up. So far, really, only the punt unit is the unit that I'm looking at as special teams. It's performing up to where I would like to see them. Every other unit needs to improve, and they got to do it in a hurry, or there's going to be serious questions that need to be asked.
All right, Mike Tomlin talked about the Browns, in particular, what he sees from the skill position guys on the offensive side of the ball.
We're very familiar with them. They're very familiar with us. I'm sure both sides can say that. We got some usual battles to fight as we lean in on this thing. I think if you're playing these guys and you're looking at their offense, boy, you better minimize Chubb and Hunt. A lot of ball rolls through those guys. They're not 1 and 2. They're 1 and 1A. I think Chubb's got 76 snaps on the season. I think Hunt's got 74. Man, both guys are capable. Both guys are good in all schematic circumstances, be it the run game, the passing game, check downs, screens, what have you, inside and outside. They're a formidable tandem and probably the most complete tandem in football. And so we got a work cut out for us there. Jacoby's doing a nice job of supplementing what it is they do in the running game with the things they do in the passing game, play action screens, boots, play pass. He's got some dangerous eligibles. Njoku we're very familiar with. Peoples-Jones we're familiar with. Amari Cooper's a new challenge. When you look at him, though, it doesn't appear that Amari's doing a lot of things differently than maybe Beckham and Landry were asked to do for them from a schematic standpoint, but he is new to the division. We do have a lot of respect for his talents, his route running ability, his stop-start ability. He can stick his foot in the ground. We got to get used to being in stadium with a guy like that.
And the thing that's interesting is the way he talks about Chubb and Hunt. It doesn't ever change. And the Steelers have had some success in slowing that tandem down.
I always catch a lot of flack for this, but I like Mike Tomlin as a coach, as leader of men. I think he's exceptional, and I completely agree with his assessment. If you hear his scouting report, that's on the money. You got to stop that two-headed monster first, and everything from there. I will say the Amari Cooper thing when he said he's not being asked to do anything different schematically than what we saw out of Beckham and Landry. I don't ever remember a game where Beckham was targeted 10 times and caught 9 balls, though. So I think the efficiency, I think Amari does bring something a little different than they did, just being right where he's supposed to be, right when he's supposed to be there, and being more of a downfield threat than Landry ever was, So I do think he presents a little more problem than Tomlin's letting on. But he's right. And he did talk about someone that really hasn't played much of a role so far this year in the passing game, and that is David Njoku. They have to find a way to get that man 5 to 7 touches a game, get that ball in his hands in a short game, give Jacoby some easy passes, and kind of let Njoku loosen everything up in the middle because he's a phenomenal athlete. He can do some different things and kind of exploit these linebackers. And they really haven't attacked that area of the field yet, and it's something they need to be doing soon.
Well, the other thing that's kind of interesting, offensive and defensive expected points added per play. Let's take a look at this graph, and it's kind of interesting. So you look at where the Browns are, and they are currently in the good O and bad D category. It was a little bit of a surprise. You thought it might be flipped. You look over, the Steelers are on the other side of that, so the bad O and good D. So those are kind of going to be the things that meet right now Thursday evening. And when you look at it, the offense has played so well, Casey. If the defense had held up its part of the bargain, you'd be feeling pretty good. And right now, they got to go and they got to get one Thursday. There's no other way to look at it.
Yeah, their backs are against the wall. Shout out to Owen Phillips for putting that graph together. That was a really good representation of where these teams are at right now. And you're right. You would have thought that had been flipped for the Browns as well. You would have thought that it would have been the bad O, good D side, but the offense has stepped up. And that's what's really disheartening is the defense has wasted some decent efforts from this offense, and everyone was worried about having to raise their game to keep Jacoby up. Well, Jacoby played really well on Sunday, and you wasted that effort. I don't know how many more of those you get to where he's that efficient and the offense is humming like that. So that's very disheartening. But the Steelers do have a good defense. They do. They are struggling on offense. So it's going to be a get-right game for one of those units. You know what I mean? So you just got to hope that the Browns' defense is up to the challenge and can hold the Steelers under 20.
Casey Kinnamon and I from Dawg Pound Daily going to step aside, take a quick time out of the side of the break. We'll talk a little bit more about that Browns-Steelers matchup, plus some more voicemails of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns in that game on Sunday.
Hey guys, how are you? Just Brian calling again. A long-time viewer of the show, and I call in frequently. I guess my only thing I could say about the game is, who do you blame? The defense gave up over 300 yards passing to Joe Flacco, who's 38, 37 years old, can't move out of the pocket, but yet he beat us with just throwing to the same receiver over and over and over. So where were the halftime adjustments? And, when they came to play against Baker, he saw pressure. Now you get to Flacco, who's 37 and can't move, and I feel like you don't even pressure him. You think your front four are going to get to him. They're doubling Miles. They're chipping everywhere. Why not just blitz him out of the game and keep him where he's not able to just stand in the pocket and light the Browns up? But he lit the Browns up for 300-plus yards with basically one receiver. I mean, he hit some other guys, but Garrett Wilson was the main guy the whole game. Where was the defensive adjustments made by the defensive coordinator? Is it time to make a change? What do you guys think? Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, I get the thought there. The one thing I would say is, if you're blitzing, there's a lot of communication that's involved as to who is covering. That's why the communication issues, you almost have to stay in a base defense so that you don't have to communicate if you can't communicate in the secondary.
Yeah, that's one thing I said in the lead up to the game is I would have rather seen Zach Wilson, because I don't fear either Flacco or Wilson, but until these communications disappear, why don't you give me the quarterback who doesn't see the field as well? Flacco's seen everything. He can recognize a busted coverage when he sees one. And they just let him be too comfortable, especially in the second half. And when they realized they weren't, getting a natural pass rush, they should have adjusted to either drop some guys back and send someone different just to try to keep his mind going, because as soon as he was comfortable, he was straight up drop back and pitch and catch like open air, and it got really frustrating. And I don't know, I don't know what else you can do. Like you said, the communication era, they limit you to what you're able to do. They kind of handcuff you, and you can't send a house, because if he sees that, that's free money too. So they got to get creative when they realize their pass rush isn't working.
All right, we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the upcoming game.
Hey, this is Tony Frost, frequent caller, 50-year Browns fan. We got the Steelers coming up Thursday, and all I'm going to say is as heartbreaking as that loss was Sunday, our defense, they should be in the film room, on the field every day, every night until we get it right. We cannot afford to lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers Thursday night. We gotta win this game because after that, we got the Falcons, then the Chargers, then the Patriots. You know, it's just going to get more and more competitive. We got to get it together. Go Browns! Woof woof.
Yeah, Casey, that's the thing. You got the Steelers, then the Falcons, and then you're into the quote-unquote tougher part of the schedule. So those offenses that are coming up, if you don't have your act together in the secondary, it's going to get real ugly.
Yeah, there's no layups in the NFL, but they need to use these next two games against what I would consider to be the lesser of the teams you're going to face and kind of get this thing rolling in the right direction. Because after they get past that Atlanta game and you play the Chargers, like it's the Globetrotters, you know what I mean? You don't want to be the Washington Generals out there getting clowned on, so you have to step your game up. Now, the good thing is we know they have the talent to do so. It's can they implement that and play within the scheme and play together as a unit. But, you know, we have to see it. You know, to believe that, we need to see it. And these next two games can go a long way in inspiring confidence, and not just the fans, but the players themselves, you know, because if they're the ones who are going to go out there and compete against, you know, Mike Williams coming up, you know, and if you just look at the schedule, you know, the Bills and the Bucks, there's a lot of tough games coming. You got Cincy twice. You know, there's a lot of good receivers on this, and quarterbacks will exploit you and, you know, kind of catch you with your pants down. So, you know, it's time to get it together.
Yeah, and that secondary, I thought it was going to be a strength. They need to get it together quickly. ESPN Power Rankings out. Browns are currently 17th, and it says they need to, here's a revelation. They need to eliminate coverage breakdowns. Thank you very much. So the Browns are 17. Steelers are 18th in these power rankings. You know what? The way they've played, that's about where they should be. Quite frankly, they haven't looked like a playoff team yet.
Yeah, it's fair. It's all fair. I kind of feel these power rankings, the first month of the season, we don't know what these teams are. The leads you kind of know, but you got to let them show you who they are. And so far, what we've shown to be is a middle-of-the-pack team. You know, offensive scoring averaging 28 a game, and then defense is giving up a boatload every fourth quarter. You know, that's kind of who they've shown to be. So until they write that, that's where they're going to stay, that middle of the pack. You know, and if the defense even has a decline, you're going to see this nosedive quickly.
Jacoby Brissett met with the media today, talked about what he has seen from the Steelers on the field this year, even without T.J. Watt.
Minka in 97, Hayward and those guys, I mean, and 56 is really good player. I mean, I think they got a really good defense. Obviously, you got to know where 39 is when you break the huddle and be aware of him. He's, I mean, as good as advertised, what you see on film, and it's going to be a challenge, that's for sure. And it's going to take a 60-minute football game, focus, and attention to detail and the things that we're going through in our game plan to make the right decisions.
Jacoby, if you watched that the New England game, I'm sure, how are they different, the pass rush, without T.J. Watt?
I mean, they still look good to me, and I think New England still did things to try to help mitigate as much as possible. But they still got good players, and obviously I know they wish they had TJ out there, but I'm sure those guys on that other side of the ball are happy that they get to go out there and play football and play in the National Football League and make plays and make a name for themselves. And watching that film, you can see that.
Casey, this will be the best defense they play without question. And keep in mind, this is a defense that turned the ball over 5 times against Joe Burrow. Some keys to this one.
Well, the best defense and the most disciplined defense. They do what they do, and they do it well. I actually have an article coming out tomorrow with the Steelers to watch for, and I highlighted Cam Hayward and Nick Fitzpatrick. The outside linebackers in this 3-4 defense for the Steelers get all the pub because they get the sacks. Watch 97. He is a bully. If Aaron Donald didn't exist, he's the preeminent tackle in this league, defensive tackle. He's disruptive. He's strong. I mean, he can hurt you in a lot of ways, and he still has a lot of juice in the tank for his age. And he's a guy that everyone looks up to. He's that quiet leader, out there leading by example. And if Joel Bitonio is unable to go, that is a tough proposition for Dunn or whoever they have step in at left guard. It's rough out there. And Fitzpatrick, when they went and traded for him in 2019 and gave up a first round, it was kind of a head scratcher at first, but they knew what they were getting. That, he is a turnover machine. He's savvy. He's very heady. He baits quarterbacks. He's playing a mind game out there. And if you make a mistake, he will capitalize on it. This defense, they just reload. You don't replace a TJ Watt, but they'll supplement. Highsmith, they have some guys out there who can do some stuff, and they'll be put in the best position possible to succeed. So you can't take anything for granted facing Pittsburgh's defense. They're that good.
Casey Kinnamon, Dawg Pound Daily, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Casey Kinnamon, make sure you read him. Dawg Pound Daily. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4.